On December 18th, 2022, a video started streaming on YouTube. It runs about 6 hours. In it, a man sits in his living room in Lisburn, wearing a Santa hat and playing Grand Theft Auto. He apologizes a few times for technical issues that he says are keeping him from reading the chat. He mentions the date more than once. He seems relaxed with absolutely nowhere else to be that night, but he wasn't there at all. Stephen was 32 years old, a YouTuber from Lisburn known for reviewing Doctor Who merchandise and Marvel figures. He worked part-time as an assistant audience editor at a local newspaper. By most accounts, an ordinary guy with an extremely online hobby. He met Natalie on Bumble in August 2022. Things moved fast, and by October he'd met her family. From the outside, it looked like a relationship heading somewhere good. However, messages later pulled from Natalie's phone told a different story. She'd been texting other men, still unsure if Stephen was really the one. Prosecutors would later argue he found those messages, and that what followed wasn't sudden rage. On December 18th, Natalie watched the World Cup final with her parents in Craigavon and got home a little after 5 p.m. Around the same time, Stephen posted to his subscribers that he'd be going live at 6, a 6-hour Christmas gaming stream. Except the recording had already been sitting on his hard drive since December 14th. He'd filmed it 4 days early in the same Santa hat and cued it to broadcast at the exact hour he'd need an alibi. About halfway through, while playing, he stops to complete an optional side mission. It's called Waste the Wife. The objective is to kill a woman and make it look like an accident. Prosecutors called it deliberate, a taunt, left in plain sight for whoever eventually went looking. While that recording played to an audience who had no idea, the real Stephen left his house on foot. Security cameras picked him up walking nearly 2 miles to a bus stop in Dunmurry, where he boarded a bus and paid in cash. Hood up and face covered, he got off and walked the last 1.5 miles alone. Security footage caught him entering Natalie's street at 8:52 p.m. There was no forced entry. She let him in. Neighbors heard screaming just after 9. By 9:30, he was walking back out. What happened in those 40 minutes wasn't a struggle that got out of hand. Natalie was found face down near her dog's bowl in a pool of her own blood. She was 15 weeks pregnant. A taxi picked Stephen up outside a bar in Lurgan and drove him home. He'd changed his clothes along the way. By the time he walked back through his own front door, his stream was still running, still convincing thousands of people he had never left the house. The next evening, he went back to Natalie's home, called 999, and told police he'd just found her.
Ambulance service, is the patient breathing?
Sorry?
Is the patient breathing?
No! She's cold!
Okay, then what's the address of the emergency, please? And are you saying she's pregnant?
Yes!
And she's not breathing? Did you say she's cold?
She's cold!
Okay.
He attempted CPR. He pointed officers toward her ex-boyfriend as a possible suspect. He was arrested on the spot and released within hours because his alibi checked out. YouTube itself confirmed the broadcast had gone out live, so he kept going and visited her grave. He sat with her grieving family and let them comfort him, knowing exactly what he'd done 4 days before he ever pressed play. What finally broke it open was a bus stop camera in Dunmurry, picking up a masked man with the same build as someone supposedly 6 hours into a live stream at home. Once investigators pulled his devices, the rest came apart fast. The software showed no live activity that night. The file had been recorded, saved and broadcast on a delay. He'd deleted the original less than an hour after it ended. He was rearrested on January 31st, 2023. At trial, the judge called it cold-blooded and calculated, a murder he had planned in remorseless detail against someone he professed to love. In March 2026, a jury took less than 2 hours to find him guilty. In June, he was sentenced to life with a minimum of 31 years before parole is even possible. Natalie's father stood outside the courthouse afterward and said his family has been serving a life sentence of their own since the day they lost her. For 12 straight days in August 2025, a live stream ran almost non-stop on a platform called Kick. For 12 days, thousands of people watched a man getting humiliated, shot with paintballs, and kept awake for money. On the 12th day, he stopped moving. One of the other men in the room threw a water bottle at him to check if he was okay. When that got no reaction, he slapped him across the face. Still nothing. The stream was cut moments later. His name was Raphael Graven. Online, his fans knew him as John Pormanov. Graven was 46 years old, a former French Air Force veteran from a town near Metz. He started making content in 2020 during COVID lockdowns, posting gaming videos and comedy skits on TikTok. He built a loyal audience with a loud, chaotic style, full of rage moments and over-the-top reactions, and eventually moved to Twitch, where he picked up close to 700,000 followers. By 2023, he had shifted to Kick, a newer platform known for far looser moderation than Twitch, and there his content changed with it. What started as gaming videos slowly turned into something people online started calling trash streaming. Graven became a regular target in skits involving humiliation, physical pain, and abuse, alongside two younger streamers, Owen Senazandati, who went by Naruto, and Safin Hamadi, a third man, known online as Kudu, who lived under legal guardianship due to a disability, was frequently paired with Graven in similar segments. Viewers paid to watch, and the more extreme it got, the more money came in. In December 2024, an investigative report exposed what it called an abuse business being run around these streams, specifically naming Graven and Kudu as the people being targeted. The Nice prosecutor's office opened an investigation for violence against vulnerable people. However, when investigators questioned Graven and Kudu directly, both men denied being victims of anything. They said it was staged, that they were free to leave whenever they wanted, and refused medical or psychiatric evaluation. With no victim willing to confirm abuse, the investigation stalled and the streams continued. On August 5, 2025, a new stream began. It would run for nearly 300 hours without stopping, close to 12 full days. During it, Graven was subjected to ongoing mistreatment and almost no real sleep. At some point during those 12 days, he sent a text message to his mother. "Stuck for a bit in their death game," he wrote. "It's going too far. I feel like I'm kidnapped with their shitty concept. I'm fed up. I want to get out of here." Two professional footballers even appeared in pre-recorded clips during the stream, cheering Graven and Kudu on to keep going, apparently unaware of what they were actually encouraging. On August 18th, Graven stopped responding. He was found unresponsive at the rented property in Contes, a village north of Nice, where the stream had been running. He died in his sleep. A preliminary autopsy found no traumatic injuries and no indication that a third party had directly caused his death. French officials have suggested his death may be linked to underlying health issues combined with the prolonged exhaustion of the broadcast, though the full investigation is still ongoing. The reaction in France was immediate. The country's digital affairs minister, Clara, called what happened to Graven an absolute horror, noting he had been humiliated and mistreated for months in plain view of the public. Kick banned the accounts involved and removed related content, though it faced criticism for initially restoring some of it. In January 2026, Owen and Hamadi were taken into custody on charges including assault, incitement to hatred, and abuse of a vulnerable person. Both have maintained, as they did from the start, that everything was staged for views. And somehow, the part that stayed with me wasn't what happened during those 12 days. It was what people were still willing to deny after they were over. Graven's mother later defended the men who had spent months physically mistreating her son on camera, calling them good people and insisting the violence wasn't real. She said this after he was already gone. On the night of July 1st, 2020, Byron ended his stream the way he often did, talking to his chat, half joking, half sincere. "If you guys get lonely, you should talk to each other," he said. "Maybe find some friends to play games with." He told them he'd see them tomorrow or the next day, but there was no next day.
If you guys get lonely, you should talk to each other maybe and find some friends to play games with whenever you play games. Have a good night. See you guys tomorrow or the next day.
Byron, known to millions as Wreckful, was one of the earliest and most influential streamers on Twitch. Long before streaming was a career path anyone took seriously, he was already one of the best World of Warcraft players in the world, the first player to ever reach a 3000 rating, a multiple-time tournament champion. He played Rogue in a way nobody else did at the time, and people tuned in by the tens of thousands just to watch him think through fights in real time. However, what made Wreckful different from a lot of streamers wasn't just the gameplay, it was how openly he talked about what was going on inside his head. Byron had been diagnosed with bipolar II disorder. He'd struggled with depression since he was a kid, partly shaped by something that happened when he was only 6 years old. His oldest brother took his own life. Byron grew up the rest of his childhood in the shadow of that loss. He described himself as a nerdy kid that nobody liked, bullied for his accent after moving from Israel, and said video games were the one place that gave him an escape from all of it. He found that escape first in Asheron's Call, then later in World of Warcraft, a game he would go on to dominate competitively for years. In his final couple of years, Byron started talking about his mental health on stream in a way that genuinely surprised a lot of his audience. In one widely shared clip from that period, he's visibly emotional. It's not performative. It's a man who built an entire career on being unfiltered about something a lot harder to talk about than a video game loss. He had sought help. He'd spoken on stream about working with mental health professionals in the gaming space, about trying different approaches to manage his depression, about wanting things to get better. In his last years, he had also started building something called Everland, a social game designed, in his own words, to help people find friendship and community, inspired directly by what MMOs had given him when he had nothing else. Hours before his final stream ended, Byron posted publicly on Twitter and proposed to his girlfriend Becca, adding a note acknowledging what he called his own insanity and making clear he wasn't pressuring her to say yes. On July 2nd, 2020, Byron took his own life in Austin, Texas. He was 31 years old. The response from the gaming and streaming community was immediate and enormous. Streamers across Twitch paused their content to talk about him. Blizzard, the company behind the game he'd spent over a decade mastering, added a permanent NPC named Wreckful into World of Warcraft, placed inside the Cathedral of Light, a small, quiet tribute inside the world he'd given so much of his life to. Fans still gather there. On June 19, 2019, a video titled "I'm Sorry" appeared on a YouTube channel called TR1 Iceman. It runs about 8 minutes. In it, a man walks slowly through Lower Manhattan near the East River, talking directly into the camera. He apologizes over and over to names his audience would recognize. He talks about a legacy he feels he's ruined, about pushing people away until he had nobody left. At one point, he breaks down talking about Attack on Titan, of all things, realizing out loud that he'll never see how it ends. He says he wasn't trying to take his life, he just kept pushing things too far, and somewhere along the way, the walls closed in faster than he realized. That was the last anyone heard from Desmond, better known to over 1 million subscribers as Etika. Etika built his name on Nintendo content, over-the-top reactions to Super Smash Bros. Trailers and gameplay streams. His energy was the whole appeal. His main channel grew past 800,000 subscribers. He was, by most accounts, one of the most genuinely entertaining people in the gaming space at the time. However, behind the energy, something had been building for a while. In October 2018, Etika's main channel was terminated after he uploaded content that violated platform guidelines. Around the same time, he posted cryptic, alarming messages online, checked himself into a hospital, then came back out and apologized, framing it as a protest against YouTube's policies. He started a new channel, calling it more sincere than what came before. Then in April 2019, things escalated further. He posted increasingly concerning messages on social media, including a photo with a firearm that was later determined to be edited. He live-streamed from inside his apartment as NYPD officers conducted a welfare check, with thousands of people watching it unfold in real time. He was hospitalized again, he came back again, called it shock humor, and sat down for an interview where, to anyone paying close attention, his behavior raised more questions than it answered. Then came the video on June 19th. After posting it, Etika went missing. The last confirmed contact anyone had with him was a phone call around 8 p.m. that same night. 3 days later, on June 22nd and 23rd, his belongings were found on the Manhattan Bridge. On June 24th, his body was recovered from the East River near South Street Seaport. He was 29 years old. His old channel where he posted his final video has since been renamed. It's now called Thank You Etika. The description simply states that the channel will remain inactive, preserved as a memory of the career he built, and notes that fans raised over $2,500 in his name for the National Alliance on Mental Illness shortly after he passed.